Welcome to the June 27th meeting of the Selectboard. Here with one topic on the agenda, and that is for a discussion about the transfer of materials to the proposed upland facility. We allowed for 1 hour for GE and EPA to do their presentation, and then we have a 15-minute period where the select board can make comments or ask questions, and another 15-minute period for the public.
7 people can talk.
We've agreed that the meeting would end at 12:30. I'm here longer than that if anybody has anything they want to say. To me, it's up to the board as a whole, whether it continues and just kind of informally afterwards. I just want to remind people that this meeting is strictly about transportation. Should the facility come into being, that's still up in the air. There's a lot of conversations going on, a lot of efforts being made in all directions. So today's meeting is simply about transportation. If you do speak, you have to stay on topic of transportation, because we know that there are a lot of opinions about the facility itself. People's opinions are widely known, well known, but that's what today's meeting is about. So with that, I'll let you start.
We need to go. I don't know if you want to say before you go.
Yeah, I'll just say briefly that this meeting was contemplated in the discussions prior to the permit. GE is going to submit to EPA for review the formal transportation plan on October 31st. However, there was a commitment to get input or feedback from the town of Lee and others prior to that submittal. This is not in lieu of public input on that document. So when the document gets submitted officially by GE on October 31st, EPA, as we've done for several other documents, will have a public input period where we take the public's comments, post them on the webpage, consider all those comments before we reply back to GE with either conditional approval letter with a series of conditions or a requirement to resubmit the plan. So this is just step one. I don't want to call it informal input, but it's input the GE will take back with them when they develop a plan. And since it's due in October, Chris, we talked that if the town of Lee has further comments or suggestions, they can provide them to GE or provide them to us a week before. It doesn't have to all happen today. Obviously, input provided October 25th is probably not going to be all that helpful. So I think maybe late July would be great. And there's no real formal way to get those comments. It could be email, it could be a letter, it could be whatever mechanism the town will leave on us to provide input back to GE. That's all I have.
Point of clarification, please. Could I trouble you to have the people speaking introduce themselves to everyone?
Certainly. So we know who you are, so if you could just say.
Sure. Dean Taliaferro, EPA, overall project lead for the entire GE Pittsfield Plutonic River site. Mostly today, well, not mostly, solely today, is going to be GE giving the presentation. It's not EPA's presentation, and GE and their representative will announce themselves.
Thank you.
Basic question before we get started. Why wasn't this at 6 o'clock at night when everybody's back from work and 11 o'clock?
It's inconvenient for me sometimes, it's inconvenient for everybody sometimes. We're going to move on to this meeting as it is right now.
I was just wondering if there was a reason why.
I agree.
Because you could probably have a lot more people involved in this if it was at a more opportune time for people to come. Thanks.
I was wondering why we only get 15 minutes to speak. That means only 7 people can talk.
That's the end. We're here to listen to a presentation to begin with. Is anybody interested in that?
Not really.
So Sandy, still sort of the GE, if you want to introduce your team, and then I'll turn it completely over to Cheryl.
We can't hear you.
So my name is Andrew Silfer. I'm the GE have spent several decades working on this project, both on the facility, the related sites, and the design. And, obviously, it's evolved the last few years in the design, various documents, including design documents being submitted to EPA. Along with me today is Matt Calcone, who's one of our key members in this field, and Mark Relding, who's one of our consultants, engineering consultants. He's based in Syracuse, New York, and Mark is put this presentation and some figures together that we're going to review and go through, and we welcome people's input and comments on that. So with that, I think Mark should start the presentation, give some additional, give some background on the remedy to get everyone kind of on the same page about what we know at this point, what we're anticipating, and then we'll get to the transition to the actual transportation and disposal discussion.
Okay, thanks. As Eddie said, my name is Mark Gravelding. I'm with Arcadis. I'm an environmental engineer. We've been working for GE on this site. And today we're going to be talking about the transportation disposal plan, and probably more specifically the potential transportation routes that would be looked at as we develop this plan. So for the agenda, I'll provide a little bit of site description just to kind of orient everyone and provide that overview of how the transportation and disposal plan is set up, what it's intended to do. I'll provide also a summary of the various removal volumes and a little information on the schedule of when those removal volumes and those removal activities will be performed. I'll discuss the various modes of transportation that we'll be looking at during the development of the plan, including the number of trucks you might expect during the duration of that time on an annual basis as well as an average daily basis. And then also we'll touch on the quality of life compliance plan. It's a different plan than the transportation plan, but provides some information that overlaps with the transportation plan, so I think it's important to look at the overall picture of how this will ultimately end. So the site description, the Rested River, the Housatonic River includes the river, all of its backwater areas, floodplains, riverbeds, etc., starting from the east and west branch confluence. Down to, for this phase, down to rising ponds. Each of the reach has been separated, or the river has been separated into various reaches, which I'll explain. You have an idea of where I'm talking about when I'm saying what each 5 lane is, for example.
Oh, is this online by any chance, or what's written here?
No, this is just something we're sharing from the meeting here right now. So the reaches, as I mentioned, includes reach, what we call reach 5 through reach 8, and material will be removed from the river itself, from the riverbanks, the floodplains, various backwater impounded areas, and that material will be taken for disposal either to the upland facility, upland disposal facility, which is located near Woods Pond, or will be taken off-site for disposal. And the way things are set up with a permit, up to at least 100,000 cubic yards of material will be going off-site, with the rest being going to the on-site disposal facility. The reaches, and you'll see this more on the maps too when I present those. I'll present the maps at the end, but we're going to be talking about reach 5. That's reach 5A specifically, from the confluence to the Eastfield water treatment plant. That's the first section that's going to be done. This work is being done in phases. And the first design, which is going to be conceptual design, is going to be submitted in the fall of this year. And then, subsequent designs will be submitted after that. So when I'm talking about the transportation disposal plan, I'm mostly going to be focused on what's going to happen, upper reaches, 5 to 6, because those are some of the first reaches that are going to be done. And that's basically from the confluence of this pond below Woods Pond is further down the road, which is 7 and 8, that's 10 years. So the transportation and disposal plan, what sets up that document is the permit, the revised permit, which was issued to GE by the EPA on December 20. So that specifies the various work that needs to be done and plans and so that need to be submitted. GE then developed what's called the statement of work, which describes basically the different documents and things that was put together that would describe the remediation. That was approved by EPA in September of 21. So under the work that's described in the statement of work, this is where I talked about it's a phase design, so design for the first phase, 5A, is what's going to be submitted this fall. Subsequent design phases will come later. Reach 6, which is Woods Pond, will be the next phase after 5A, and things will just continue in 5B, 5C, etc. There are supporting plans to the designs that are going to be submitted. This transportation and disposal plan is one of those supporting plans. That's what we're talking about today. That will be submitted, as Dean mentioned, in the fall of this year for everyone's review and comment. What we're doing here today is providing you an indication of where we're thinking things are going to happen, how they may occur, get feedback, and give you an opportunity to comment on that. So I'll move into a summary of the volumes. And this information, I know this is probably a little small for a lot of people to read, but this information is in EPA's documents and on the website in the statement phases. This is all the estimates of the volume of removal from each of the different regions I talked about. A total of over 1 million cubic yards of material that will be removed from the river and floodplains, etc. I would let you know that that is an estimate based on the data that was available at the time this was developed. GE is in the process of collecting additional data in all of the reaches that will refine these volume numbers and change somewhat. But this gives us a pretty good indication of what to expect at this point. So 5A, the first reach that I mentioned, there's 193,000 cubic yards of sediment next soils, about 44,000 yards of soil. So that will be the first, that's 5A is all in Pittsfield essentially, it goes down to the Pittsfield wastewater treatment plant. 5B would be the next reach downstream. That has a somewhat smaller amount, 1,000 cubic yards of sediment, 15,000 cubic yards of soil. And then 5C backwaters, 6, I kind of talked about that together. That's the next portions down. That's where the bulk of the volume is going to be removed. It's going to come from. There's 700,000 approximate cubic yards from that portion of the river. And we are looking at, for that, hydraulic transport. So in that case, the material would be transferred in a pipeline to the disposal facility, the upper disposal facility. And that wouldn't use all the truck routes and things that I'm going to present later on. Those routes are for material.
Is that an existing pipeline or you're going to?
No, that would be a pipeline that would be designed to carry material from the site to where it's removed to the public disposal.
Right.
And that's going to be primarily sediment because that's removed with called hydraulic dredging. So it's removed from the river with a pump and system that will keep it all in a pipe and up to where we're going to then manage it. There will still be materials from floodplain areas, banks, things like that, that would be subject to trucking. So you'll see some of those volumes and talking about the truck issues to stuff.
In 5C and 6, if it's over 50 parts per million average, would that be trucked out and not piped? That was understanding.
There's a good criteria explained in the permit of how you determine what goes off-site and what goes on-site. There's averaging that has to occur
Right.
every day, and so yeah, it's hard to say, that it's not really a bright line if 50 goes off-site.
Right, I guess I know it was done by sections, and if the
Right.
section was higher. So I guess the question is, if it's not planned to go to a new DF, does it get, if it's
Yes.
going off-site,
So
only
in
get
those,
trucked instead of piped?
in those sections that we're going to be able to do hydraulic fitting, there's a couple ways that it could be managed if it's gonna go off-site. One would be to separately remove it first by mechanical means and not use the hydraulic. So smaller portions could be removed, taken up to an area on land, and then eventually transferred to a truck taking it off-site. The other way is to still hydraulically dredge it, but that could be dredged first and be managed separately at the watering area up at the upland disposal facility, and then placed in a truck and taken off-site.
Could you tell us the diameter of the pipe?
If you'll excuse me, we're listening to the presentation, there'll be time for questions afterwards, so I suggest that we all sharpen our pencils and prepare for questions when it's done. If we're gonna get through this, let's listen to what's being said and save our questions for the other end, please. Thanks.
I would also say that this is all subject to the designs that are being developed. So things like whether we're actually going to be able to do the pipeline transport, how large the pipe is going to be, what volumes are going to be moved at a time. All that is yet to be designed. We're just starting into this process of design. So I won't have answers for some things. We're talking more of a bigger picture here. Modes of transportation to be evaluated. So this is what the plan is going to do. It's going to look at these various ways to move the material once it's removed from the river or the floodplains, etc. How will this material be moved to its eventual disposal location? So for off-site disposal, we'll be looking at truck transport, so placing the material into a truck, getting into a location that then we transport it off-site to its final disposal location. We'll also be evaluating the use of rail transport for off-site. In that case, the idea would be that the material would still need to be put into a truck from once it's taken out of the river, et cetera. But then we could take it to either a existing commercial facility that is in the business of accepting materials to load onto a rail car, or a newer facility could be constructed. That's all things to be evaluated. But in that case, the truck's taken to what's called the transload facility, loads it into a rail car, and then shipped by rail to its eventual destination. On-site disposal, there again, we'll be looking at truck routes and trucking it to the upland disposal facility location near Woods Pond. As I mentioned, the pipe route, if we're able to hydraulically dredge the material and transfer the pipeline, that would follow the river essentially and get up to the location of the disposal facility. And then we'll also be evaluating rail transport for that on-site portion as well. I've got another slide that will talk a little bit more about that. Specific to the truck routes, I've got a series of figures that show what those routes are. I'll bring those up at the end of the presentation and we'll walk through that so you have an idea of where material will be moved. For rail, I just wanted to just explain a little bit more about the on-site portion, how that would work. So in that case, a new, because there's nothing there existing on-site for this, a new facility would need to be created that could transfer the material onto a rail car near the remediation areas along the river. And then, so it would need to be trucked to that location, loaded into a rail car. That rail car would go down to Lennox and need to then transfer into a truck again and drive around to get to the public disposals. There is an existing rail line on the west side of the river, which I'm sure a lot of you know about. That is the type of, that's the rail line that we looked at. As I said, that is subject to further evaluation. That's what we're going to be doing in the plan. But I think it's fair to realize that that likely results in actually more management, handling, and truck transportation to make that happen, because, as I said, you need to put it in a truck and get it there from all different portions of the river to the loading facility, then move it down near the UDS and then put it in the truck. But as I said, we'll present that in the work plan for here. Here we'll talk about some of the quantities and the schedule and durations more specifically. So as I mentioned, reach 5A, that's the first reach up. This is the reach that's really entirely Pittsfield. That's going to be a schedule according to the estimates that EPA has put together. Around 4 years to complete that, about 240,000 cubic yards of material moved during that time frame. That equates to, when we looked at this, we assumed 198 days per year that would occur, so it's going to occur over 9 months, expecting there may be some winter shutdown. It doesn't mean we're always going to be shut down in the winter. I think that the work will occur as long as the weather allows. So with that schedule, that results in approximately 60,000 cubic yards for each year on average that's going to be transported, which that would equate to about 5,000 trips per year in a truck that of a 16 to 20 cubic yard size. 16 to 20 ton truck. The difference in the size trucks is a 16 ton truck is what we assume for the on-site transport. So a smaller truck would be used to take things to public disposal facilities, where a 20 ton truck would be used for off-site because that's a highway rated vehicle. It's compared to travel long distances on the pipe. As I said, these volumes are subject to change. This is just our starting point for what we have, and they'll be refined as the designs are developed. So that would be the first one, reach 5B. The next reach down goes from the treatment plant to Roaring Brook. This is a shorter duration, 1 year. There's 16,000 cubic yards of material that will be removed in that year, primarily sediment material that will be placed in trucks and transferred either to the on-site or off-site location. So that's why a much smaller number of trips, 150 total per year, and 7 a day. So that in sequence would occur after 5A. 5C, the next reach down, this is expected to be a 3-year duration, 53,000 cubic yards. You notice that that's a smaller amount, and that's because this is now we're getting into the reaches where we're going to be looking at hydraulic transport, pipeline transport. So the truck numbers here are significantly reduced. What this means, assuming that the hydraulic transport is feasible, that would save over 8,000 trips per year for a truck today. So that's why we're looking very hard at being able to do that and keep those trucks on the road. Beach 6, similar, that's Woods Pond itself, and the same situation there. There's a small amount of soil, 200 cubic yards of floodplain and areas around it that would be transferred to the truck, but it's hydraulic dredge would be pumped directly up to the upper disposal facility. And again, that would save a similar number of trucks, over 8,000 trucks local for that. 8,000 per year, sorry, for 3 years. Then we get down into some of the further reaches down south, the impoundments below Woods Pond, Glendale Dam, and Stillmill Dam, eventually down to Rising Pond. Here, there's this is a 3-year expected duration. This would occur in the last, at least 10 years or more down the road from when we start. And that material, 68,000 cubic yards, a little bit higher, 6,000 trips per year, 30 trips per day, is coming up to the UDF for its offsite. The quality of life compliance plan, I mentioned that, it's another plan that's being developed. It has some interest to the transportation disposal because it will be looking at, we'll be discussing various aspects related to quality of life for the communities, including air quality, noise, odor, habitat, et cetera. It'll be setting standards for monitoring those and monitoring these things. It'll be looking at impacts to recreation areas, et cetera. But what's related to the transportation disposal plan is that is the road use, and it will look at evaluating the conditions of the roads before we start, and then monitoring that during the effect of the remediation so that we can repair any damage that is done to the roadways that's specific to what we do. And that plan will be submitted this year as well as a draft for review in December. Yes. All right, that's the end of the words and talking here, so I want to get into some pictures. I'm gonna sit down here so I can run it. So I'll start with this is an overview figure. There's a series of these. It's hard to show 8 miles of river all together here, so we'll have to I'll try to follow you through how we go down through here. But let me explain what's on this figure. So these designations around here. So this is 5A, from the confluence down to the treatment plant. And so there's the city of Pittsfield line. That's basically where 5A stops. What's shown on here are the potential transportation routes. And I'm talking about just public transportation, the public roads. There will be, in the remediation areas, there'll be staging areas and other roadways to get from the river to eventually to get to public roads, but that's all part of the design that's being developed. Here I just want to talk about the public roads that material will be transported on. So green is the route that would be traveled to get to the upland disposal facility. And the orange dash is the off-site disposal route. So that's the route that will be traveled.
What road is that?
You can't see.
Can you tell us the name? What's the name?
Yeah, I'll get there. I wanna just explain what you're seeing for the different colors, here, so you have an understanding of what it is. So as I said, the orange is the offsite transfer station. And I'll go to a figure that, I'll go down here, so it's a little bit easier to see. You can see the names. And we'll walk down through it. So this is starting at the upstream reach of 5A, and so these roads here, this is Holmes Road, this is Route 7 and Route 20. The red here are residential areas that are identified in the permit where we can't do trucks. So that's why that's separated out, shown on here separately. This brown is the area, the remediation areas where material will be coming out. So as material comes out here, it will go to a staging area nearby where it will be dewatered and then placed in a truck. That truck will get to the public streets and then transported. In this case, material that's going off-site or on-site could be going down this route, Route 720. This is Holmes Road, another main road down. And then if we go down, there's portions from the east side coming down New Lenox Road.
Can you tell us what the red area is?
The red area is the routes that are residential neighborhoods where we, the permit specifically identifies that you can't take trucks in.
Does it say why?
Because the residential area.
Because they're rich.
Heavily congested.
Because they're residential?
All right, so, material would come down these different routes, depending on where it's taken from the river, et cetera. And, the next one here. So then it gets, this is where we get to kind of a split where, this side, to the right, down East New Lenox Road, which gets to October Mountain Road, Woodland Road, that'll be a primary route to get material to the upland disposal facility. Where material's going to off-site, it's gonna be traveling down Route 720 to get down to here to Lee, Mass Pike.
Mark, one thing, the way it's going to be, yeah, if you have light green, it's also gonna go down 7 and 20, right? It's basically two routes to get to Lee, 7 and 20, for
Right.
stuff on the west. And East New Lenox Road, to Woodland Road, to Roaring Bush Road, and the two main arteries of the road.
Right.
Route 7 for Lennox.
So as we get down the river further,
Can you stop? Can we take a picture of the
sure,
writing, the white writing? Can you do
white
that,
ring.
please?
So-
Mr. Chair, I have one, if I may, maybe we can get a copy of this and put it on
Yeah,
there.
that was-
Just, I've been thinking about this the whole time.
Yeah, actually, if I may interrupt you just for a moment, if we could get copies of not only of all these maps, but of the beginning of your presentation. Certainly, we want copies of it, but also if we can let the public know how all of this would be accessible. Because it's a lot to take in for a one-hour meeting, an hour and a half.
Yeah, we can consider that.
Well, it's going to consider it, I would consider it absolutely essential.
So what the white note is saying is, what I sort of said already, the primary route for getting to the on-site upland disposal facility will be the east side of the river, Woodland Road. That doesn't mean that some material from the west side would also go over New Lenox Road and then come down as well, but I'm showing these as options because stakeholders. So then we get down to the location of where the upper disposal facility is. I'll stop here and explain this a little bit. So, like I mentioned, 7 and 20 down to the primary offsite disposal route. This is the primary onsite disposal route. Here's the location, the upland disposal facility near Woods Pond. I also, there's, as I mentioned, there's quantities from other parts of the region that go offsite as well, so this is showing that can go offsite, go over water, and then down again. We also show that there could be some portion of the offsite that they're mentioning to be separated at the upland disposal facility, placed into a truck, and then that would go around Willow Hill Road over to Walker.
What road?
Willow Hill. This is Willow Hill.
How about that residential area there?
Yeah, we're gonna be getting to that.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Andy. But yeah, I show also the yellow dash line on here, that's hydraulic transport. I didn't show a yellow line going, 5 miles along the river, but it would, follow along the river, and then we anticipate that pipeline could cross over, go up the utility easement to get to the upper location here.
How far up the, are you, stop?
All right.
Yes. He's not giving us.
Get your questions out, please.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt once more. I'm gonna ask for the last time that we save our questions for the very, very end. I know everybody has something to say, and not everybody's going to be able to speak. So I will need to stay a little bit longer just to hear concerns. This is an informational meeting, and it makes it difficult for everybody to hear, and it's unfair to your neighbors. It's unfair to me that I can't hear when I'm being distracted by comments from the crowd. So could we please listen to it? These aren't even set in concrete. We haven't even decided there is going to be a dump yet, at least some of us. So let's listen. We know you have opinions, but we know what they say about opinions. Thank you very much.
Can I just say also that this isn't gonna be our only meeting for everybody to talk about. So we're taking notes, we'll be able to come back to this without EPA, GE in the room. We'll be able to have a public meeting and just discuss what our opinions are and what we are going to recommend that EPA consider. So save some of this for them, because believe me, we're also trying to observe what their thoughts are at this moment. That's all we're dealing with. These are our thoughts at the moment. We're gonna be coming back and asking everybody else to come in, and we'll have more of a one-on-one discussion here. So that's another good reason to just be patient with us and take notes. We're not just saying this is the end of it, we'll talk to you later. Okay? We'll be having another meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so this is kind of where I have 2 sets of maps here. So the first set, I concentrated on reaches 5 through 6. It's going to occur over the first 10 or so years. So all of the on-site transportation is the green kind of end here, and then it just shows the location going down to get to the throughway, and then off-site. That's throughway, I'm sorry, the pipe. So that, I have a different set of figures which I'll.
So Mark, just for clarification, if it's not clear, that line there is only for material going offsite.
That line
The
is,
only thing going right now from Main Street for the first 10 years, to get to the turnpike to go offsite.
What? Kidding.
We'll be talking about all that later.
okay, so I will quickly pull up another set of figures here. So this set of figures, same setup, but here it's focusing on what's going to be happening in the latter portion of the project after 10 years. So this is below Woods Pond. This is reaches 7 and 8. It's the impoundments and the including Willow Mill Dam, Rising Pond, etc. So here. We show an off-site route similar to what we had before, so there could still be material that is going off-site, taken to this location, so it shows that route going here.
What is the route?
Around Willow Hill to Walker to Route 7 and 20, down the same route to get to the Lee. We show also some off-site material because of the impoundments here that would go directly this way and then down. The green here shows from the impoundments on this side of the river so that we can transport the material which move from here up to the disposal facility. So that's reaches 7, let's reach 7B, 7A, etc. What's shown in green is what would be coming up from South County, from like Rising Pond. These are two different options to bring material up, to get through this route, over to the disposal facility, or up this route, over to the disposal facility. To show that a little bit further down, you can see so anything that's going to the disposal facility from these lower reaches would go through one of either these two routes to get up to the disposal facility. The orange line is the off-site disposal route that again is going to go to get to the pipe here. So material can be transported this way to get to the pipe.
Can you just name the streets when you're talking about the lines, because we don't know what the lines are.
We'll be talking about that in our next meeting, we'll show you what all the lines are.
So you do that.
Um,
You can give us one.
You want to open it up for questions? Yeah.
You want to answer questions? Okay, now we're going to open it up for questions.
Hi, my name is Josh Bloom. I live at 204 West Park Street here in Lee. I'm a member, representative of Lee on the Rest of the River community. I've noticed that there were only two areas marked in red as residential. Both are affluent areas of Lenox, as far as I can tell. The areas of Lee and Lennoxdale, which are not as affluent, have not been marked as residential. I see this as economic discrimination. I see this as unfair to the residents of Lennoxdale and to Lee, that you're stating that trucks are going to be going down our main street in Lee when we were told we were going to have influence over the routes. Why aren't the towns of Lee and Lennoxdale's residential areas considered residential when Lennox wealthy areas are? And my second question is, we talked with EPA about protective measures that can be used on the trucks beyond just tarps. They mentioned maybe bungee cords. Can you be on top of those tarps? Can you talk about what other methods can be used to more safely keep those trucks safe? Thank you.
As far as the red areas and what's excluded, I don't know.
Thank you. That came out of the discussions with the Rest of the River Municipal Group. First of all, they're not in Lenox. They're not in wealthy areas in Lenox. They're in Pittsfield. If the town of Lee has
Can you face us?
I'm also talking to the board. If the town of Lee, as we've talked about, has certain residential roads that they don't want waste to be hauled on, that is part of the what we're looking for. As you can see on the map, I did not see any small residential roads being transported with waste. Certainly not for the first 10 miles. The only roads I saw in Lee were the tail end of Woodland Road, whenever it changes its name on the town road, over Mill Street and up Willow Hill Road. That's all I saw. I don't know what the final plan will be. Also on this map, I believe that is Mill Street, that is where it's Columbia Street to Mill Street to Willow Hill Road is where the excavated material from behind Columbia Mill Dam will come from. And you can see certainly what we're looking for and what he's looking for, if you scroll down, Mark, is there's two other dams in Lee, behind Eagle Street, where everybody knows where that is, right at the Mass Pike. There's several ways to get to the UDF. And we're looking for input there. They could go up Main Street, and there's only two roads, so you guys can provide a lot of input on that, and the ones that you mentioned to me, South County, are not going through Lee at all.
Right.
From this presentation.
What are they going through, Lansdale?
They are only going, if you can scroll back up, in Lennoxdale, which I believe is in Lennox, yes, they have to come down, Walker Street. The only part in Lee is over the Mill Street Bridge and up Willow Road, unless I'm incorrect. That's what I'm seeing. And even Onyx, which is in Lee, which is, I believe, on Route 102, it looks like GE's first proposal is to, can you scroll down to Onyx, is to go west, I believe.
Yeah.
To Route 7, the other option was to go east and up through Lee. I mean,
Yeah.
there's only a few roads, so that's why we're looking for input, but somebody had to go first. So there's Onyx, one option was to go all the way up Pleasant Street. That's the other option, is to go west. So again, somebody had to go first, GE proposed this. We really want, ideally, if the town of Lee can consolidate the comments, it's much more helpful if it's one set of comments. Obviously, we'll take input from anybody, but conflicting comments make it extremely difficult to please everyone. Hopefully that's what they know those contacts. But mostly, it's GE's presentation.
The other part of that question I want to answer is related to the trucks and the measures that effective measures for the trucks as they transport material. So yes, they will be tarped, but these trucks have automatic tarps. It's not a piece of plastic that's draped over the bungee cords. It's on a frame. It goes. It's with hydraulics. Goes over the material, holds it in place. So it has a nice cover on top of the truck. The other measures that protect the truck transport is how the material is prepared before it gets put in the truck. So it has to be dewatered to pass what's called the paint filter test. So the paint filter test is it's actual paint filter. You can go get a Benjamin Moore, but you put the material in a cone inside this in the filter, and you measure for a period of time if any water drips out. I think it's 5 minutes. If no water drips out, that has no free liquid to leak out of it, then can be put into a truck and transported over the road. Those trucks will also be lined in addition to having a tarp over the top. And the tailgates on these trucks are also sealed with gaskets and things like that.
What about the diesel?
And that information on the trucks, I mean, that's also part of the design. That will all be in the specifications that are included in the designs for the various regions. The diesel, we do have a plan that's part of this called the Sustainability Adaptation Plan, which will be looking at the production of diesel and greenhouse gases, et cetera. So information will be presented in those couple of weeks.
So the railroad goes all the way up the
We
side of
got
that
one
river?
other person
Oh,
first.
sorry.
Hang on, yep, sorry. Hang on.
Get out. Oh, there we go. Hello, my name is Claire Leahy. I live in Lee on Mill Street. And within a half mile of the upland disposal facility, or dump is what we're calling it. I'm concerned about the staging areas and the dewatering. It sounds like it's all going up to the upland disposal area to be dewatered.
That's all part of what's being designed, the dewatering methods have not been fully developed. The thought is that for material that is removed mechanically, which means that it's taken out of the river or the floodplains with an excavator, that would be taken to a staging area that's nearby to the river where it can be placed in a stockpile that's contained and protected from runoff. That stockpile would be where the material would be allowed to have the water drained, that water would be collected and sent for treatment, basically going ground. And those will be located at various locations all the way down the river. Those have not been decided yet.
You have not located.
Those have not, those will, as each of the designs are developed, so for 5A, first one, the conceptual design will lay out where some of those areas can be.
And will any of the watering sites be in Pittsfield?
For 5A, yes, because it's all in Pittsfield.
It is on.
Yes, those dewatering sites will be in Pittsfield.
Canoe Meadows will be a watering site.
I couldn't say at this point what specific areas.
And those red lines, they are residential areas in a wealthy neighborhood in Pittsfield. And that's because we had an attorney that lived on the streets on the rest of the
Jeffrey Curtis.
coordinating committee. And certainly he did not represent this county. When he got his residential streets protected, I'm sorry, I will just jump to one other question I have, please.
In relation to the transportation.
You have not mentioned the Columbia Mill Dam at all, which is something that you're not planning to do for quite a while. It seems to me that would be something that you guys could be addressing a lot earlier, since it's in very bad condition. It's high hazard. It's leaking PCB silt already into downstream. GE is accountable for repairing it, making sure that the owner does. And in order to repair that, you're gonna have to remove the silt. So I think I'd like to see you start thinking now about getting that done earlier in the routes where you would take that out of state. I'm just hoping you can take more out of state because that's a beautiful area. Thank you.
We have more time.
You can jump in the back, gentleman that's stood up to talk way in the back.
How come the railroad isn't being used more for the transportation? It runs right down the river, the whole length. It seems like a common sense approach. Does common sense not prevail at all here?
I did mention the railroad, and we will be evaluating that as part of the transportation plan. So that will be part of what we're looking at. It does, as I mentioned, yes, the railroad runs down the whole length, but in order to use the railroad, you first have to get it there to a location where you can load it onto a rail car. So that means trucks traveling from all over to get to that location to then transport it down to the bottom, and then more trucks take it from that to around to offsite or other locations. So in the end, I'm not convinced it saves a lot of truck transport. It actually adds more truck transport to the river. But this is what we will be evaluating. So there'll be this presented in the transportation plan. There'll be an opportunity for review.
I was thinking about your hydraulic system and dewatering it and loading it on, put a siding where that upland facility is and just transport it in by rail.
Okay, let's get another person.
Tim? Greg?
My name is Tim Gray, I'm a resident of Lee and Executive Director of the Housatonic River Initiative. The first thing I'd like to say, I have to go out just a little way from what we're talking about because the way this is set up here with the screen, us people over here, we can't read it. This here is all for you guys. sit here, not for us.
Tim,
I'm just saying that we went through the whole meeting.
Good point.
And we couldn't,
Good point.
it was in a terrible place. Now, I will go, I also want to just say that EPA needs to get their act together with what they're going to do. Because what's been happening for about a year now is you're coming through and you're releasing reports and doing things that are not complete. Like the UDF plan, okay? That came out and it doesn't have much in it. It doesn't tell us what's in the UDF and things like that. And so I can see it happening here with the truck traffic, okay? Where you don't really know yet. This is like just teasing us a little bit, but you don't really know the final plan that you're thinking of the truck traffic. Yeah, I mean, that's very easy to see when you say, oh, just tell us what you think, right? Just tell us what you think. But the problem is we come to a meeting every now and then and we look for information from you. We don't look like, well, that's not ready yet. We haven't done that yet. Sorry, that isn't gonna happen for 5 years. Things like this. Your communication to us about the UDF, about the trucks and things like that, they all seem to be just like that. And we are having, we've been going to meetings for, well, at least I have, for 40 years now. And bottom line is I'm not feeling like you guys really have your act together, EPA, and General Electric, I should say too. And we need to know the facts. We need to know what the facts are going to be, you know, like forever. We need to know the solid facts. We don't need to know like, well, maybe we'll, you know, we can't talk to you about that part, but for 5 years till we do it. Well, I think you need to understand how to, you need to spend some work on the way you are presenting what you're doing to the public, because it's not good. And this thing could have been solved by just having that little sign right there pointing straight back at this room here so that everybody could have watched that sign. We were all upset in the back corner because this thing, you can't see where it is. It's really for these guys right here. Right?
Tim, if I may, this is what the town of Lee has to offer. Maybe we could have done it maybe clearer, but the main thing is that we've asked for all of this to be available, not only to this board, but to everybody in the public. We want to make it as accessible as possible so that we can all come back together and have a conversation about the specifics. We want that. We live here too.
We used to have like an old pull-up screen here in our room, and it was maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, where you could actually see what was being presented. This thing here doesn't work, so I'm sorry.
Thank you. We're going to, while the meeting is supposed to end at 12:30, we're going to continue in this format until 12. And I'm trying to figure out who's next here.
All about the railroad's the most efficient way to move all this material. But you get it on the rail, take it out to a licensed landfill. It saves all the accident possibilities, the injury possibilities of going through town with all these trucks. It's the simplest, most efficient way to move all this material. And what about the people in the towns that are possible victims of all the accidents and injuries that could occur? And what do you think about the outcome of all this? Nobody wants this done. Not one single person in town. What do you think they're doing? Telling us how to do it. We don't want it.
Bill, Roach?
I've got a question with the pipe. You talked a lot about it. We know that when you put cement in the pipe, it has to be flat. Otherwise, you can't push it. You're gonna push this a long way. I have no idea how far. And I'm wondering, so you can't leave water beforehand. You leave water afterwards? Is that the idea? At another place where you're gonna dump it? And how do you wash it out at night if you leave it in there overnight? I'm kind of wondering about the PCBs that will start floating with that.
So Yeah, the pipe is sealed, so there's nothing released from the pipe. The material is in the, as you know, in the water slurry in order to be able to pump it. You can't pump the solid at water. So that's actually at about a 10% solids rate, is typical, somewhere 10 to 15%. So that means it's, 85, 90% water that's used. So that would be pumped with the water to the upland disposal facility where it would, then the water would be removed. There's different ways to remove the water. That's all part of the design we're going to be developed. But the water would be removed at that location, treated, discharged back to the river, and the materials that are dried into water would be placed in the disposal facility. And that pipe basically runs constantly. If you need to shut it down, it's not really efficient to shut it down, every day, but if you do need to shut it down, you go through a flushing operation. So you flush with water until all the solids are out of the pipe before you shut it down.
One other question, you're gonna test the water coming out? Is that what it is?
Yes, the water would all be, the water would all be tested, to meet the standards that are gonna be developed, this project, before it gets discharged back to the river.
Gail, if you could just give your name, please.
Give your name. He said, go, give your name.
Okay, for me, somebody just give me a minute, I'm sorry. In here. Hi, Gail Street, West Park Street, please. My question was, where is this hydraulic pipe going to start? I mean, I couldn't see where you were this plan here, I couldn't see where you were trying to start the hydraulic pipe.
So reach 5C, let's just reach here, so that's just below the Lennox Road,
So how many miles is that?
it's about 3 miles.
So you could pipe something, you could pipe this 3 miles,
Right,
you have pumps that can do that.
well, what you use in that case is a series of pumps, they're called booster pumps, so the device that's removing the sediments, the dredge has its own pump that gets it started in the pipe. At various locations, there would be a booster pump that would be able to keep that material moving down the pipe.
And how are you going to treat this water? You say you're gonna treat this water, but this water is gonna have PCBs, I would assume, floating in it, and you're only gonna have 10% sediment or solids. So that's quite a lot of water to deal with. How are you going to sequester that water, the PCBs that come out of that water? And what are you gonna do with it? I mean, it's a lot of water. That sounds like a big mess to me.
Well, that's not really part of what we're talking about here, the water treatment part of it, but.
And I also asked you why you didn't consider, I don't even think we should have this dump anywhere in town, but why, the Lennox side, it seems like you wouldn't even need to go up Roaring Brook or whatever. You could stay on one side of the street, of the river, and have the dump in Lennox. They're already there. I mean, really, why didn't you consider Lennox? You're putting it in the most permeable site. Have you looked at Post Farm? Why did it not get put in Lennox?
Pit town
I'm
against
sorry,
town.
I don't think we should have the dump at all, quite honestly, but if you're gonna have it, it seems like you're transferring both sides of the river, and if you're gonna use this hydraulic pump, you could move these hydraulic pumps along the river, the riverine system, and have various ports, put it onto the rail, that would be the best route. You could de-water at certain ports. I know that the railroad offered these port locations for you, and you're not dredging all the river, you have certain designations, which is still a mystery to me exactly where you're going to be dredging everything. I know some people have figured it out better than I have, but why aren't you using the rail system and just getting it out of town, or put it in the Lennox site? This is already, Post Farm is huge, you could try to use that,
there's already a landfill over on that side of the river. Why are you putting it at the base of October Mountain? These are questions that, it seems like if you're worried about transportation, that should be considered in this whole plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to just state your name, please.
Hi, Ann Lang, live in Main Street. Question about transportation. Many of my other questions are already answered. This one particularly was not yet. So who decides who the trucking company is that's going to be doing the transportation?
I don't think that's been determined yet. That trucking company could be hired by the contractor who's doing the work.
Who's that?
They could be hired by
Do you know, as a GE representative?
Yeah, because we want to look them up. We want to see their background. We want to see. This is important information.
It's a few years away, but like as Mark said, like we need to, obviously the process is we need, there's a lot of data collected, there's more to go, even in 5A, a lot has been collected, that's the first reach, as Mark mentioned. Conceptual design is
Do you have a criteria when you go to look for a trucking
there's a
company?
little bit of a process. Then we need to take EPA, it'll be out, EPA will put out public comments, EPA will give us comments, we'll revise it most likely in some ways. Then we have to move on to the final design, which is much more detailed. But once we actually have an approved design, we will then competitively bid the work to contractors that are qualified throughout the United States. There's a number of people that do this cover. As Mark said, they may have some of their own truck drivers and equipment, they may need to sub out some of it, they may need some or all of it. We probably won't contract directly with local transportation. The offsite part, we probably we generally do on our own contract, but we have, safety standards, other ways we look at the contractor, they have to be qualified from a safety perspective and a quality perspective. And so that's kind of the mix of what's going to be involved in who's going to be doing it.
I understood the process already, but thank you for explaining it again. You said you're probably not going to use local trucking companies, not something you guys typically do. So if this isn't your first rodeo with these type of sites, in the past, like what is the last site that you worked on that has had transport?
In this area, there's been a number of projects at the G facility. Maximilian's done some of the work. Stevenson did work for EPA on a mile and a half a number of years ago. Yeah, there's a number, and I don't think I said it's going to use local trucking. I mean, I think if there's, and then we may not contract directly. It doesn't mean, if you're a contractor coming from out of state or in the state, but I think for that matter, I think people will look at what resources are available locally, and they want to find a cost-effective way of implementing the work. The contractor will look, we need to find local trucking, we need to find every other part of the infrastructure they need to implement the project. And I think they would look at what's available locally as well and pick what they think the best option is.
But there are already qualifications in place for whatever trucking company gets contracted, so that we don't have to, as citizens and residents, have to be concerned about if there is a certain area coming down Reach 5A, 5B, and are you guys going to be having qualified people there to monitor the behavior and the process of these trucking companies to make sure that they're not cross-contaminating? Is there someone there going to be washing under the trucks, washing around the trucks? Are there going to be places set up that either GE or the EPA team that are going to be monitoring this, so we can feel safe as a community?
Right. So
those shortcuts.
Whenever these kinds of projects are undertaken, GE has people like Arcadis or employees of Arcadis. We may use some local people as well. EPA will obviously have oversight in the field as well, both where the work's occurring and at the UDF most likely, I would think, and maybe some people moving around, watching and monitoring, et cetera. So there'll definitely be a number of people, both GE contractors, for lack of a better word, and EPA oversight as well.
May I just have a general statement about transport? For you three as our representatives, that when you guys have the end-all conversation with GE and EPA, I'm sure you already have these feelings yourselves personally because you all live together. To take in consideration that when transport comes to head, we have state roads that are stronger than our local roads. They're typically thicker. They are typically less bumpy because we don't have a lot of town money to do a lot of stuff on the side. And there'll be less traffic lights for them to stop at. There'll be less stop signs if they stay on state roads for things to get jostled or moved into trucks. So if you guys could just really remember to do that for us, and thank you for everything you do.
And believe us, this is not the last conversation about this. We're all going to be meeting again. We're all on the same side here.
Absolutely.
And I addressed to the river, Tom Machusko pointed out to me that I'm a community leader. I should be doing this. And I said, I'm not a community leader. I'm a representative. I represent everybody who's sitting here and everybody out there. And so we're going to do this together. However things turn out, we're going to do this together.
Thank you.
Cindy. About transportation.
First of all, I want to say that everything I heard today was either an assumption, experiment. Look what happened to the Hudson River. We all have that as a good example of how we cleaned up so wonderfully that it's been under litigation for years now. I just believe that if it's not going to be cleaned up totally and you're only going to clean up 30%, why stir the pot and bring all the PCBs and all this trouble in our lives? You haven't taken care of the dam. The EPA made GE buy the dams.
Cindy, if I may, please.
Okay,
When we
it's really
started,
important to say that.
Cindy, if I may, please. When we started out the meeting, we said we're going to be listening, asking questions about transportation routes. We all are on the
You
same.
mentioned the building of a pipeline. Do you have divers going down with suits on? Because somebody has to monitor it for leaks. We all know pipelines leak. Everything is an experiment and an assumption. And I don't think we need to drink this Kool-Aid right now. And we need to talk about this before anything moves forward, before you do one thing up on that hill. And I want to know, is Woodland Pond, the reservoir, going to be closed for 15 years? The hiking trail around Woodland Pond, will that be closed for 15 years? Woodland Pond, whatever it's called. Woodland Pond. Yes? No?
Nobody suggested it.
Well, that's the only way they can bring up all that PCBs.
Peg's had her hand up, go out and leave from grab. She's had her hand up a long time, right?
Yes, sir.
No input yet.
Hi, I'm that is 42 Park Street. And the building is right over there. One is at Route 20. And about 3 years ago, the town, I thought, was blowing up. And what it was canola oil was leaking from a truck that came from Lennox to Lee. And when that happened, you know, the firemen, thank goodness, the emergencies, the EPA was there. And they started putting stuff right down. And I wondered why, because it's like a skating rink when canola oil leaks. I guess I am like other people here, well, I live right there. When you dredge a river and you don't treat it, and it becomes in the air, I mean, I pray there would not be any sort of an accident, and I thought your report on that was very, very interesting, sir. But accidents do happen. I mean, we don't have to look too far in this world to know some of the things that have happened. East Palestine is one example. I am concerned coming down Main Street as well in Lee, in the town of Lee.
I mean, I don't want any accidents, I don't want anything to happen. But if there were an accident and it becomes more involved in the air and the wind is blowing and the car maybe, I know they're protected, but I'm very, very concerned about how you're going to protect the people, the schools, the churches in the town of Lee. Because it's quite a concern and it can be a real worry in many ways. So thank you very much for coming and for allowing us to speak and give our concerns.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Hi, Mark Manoli, I'm a local business owner and a resident of Sheffield. Qualify the trucks that are proposed to be used as watertight?
They're sealed, they have liners. The material before it's put in the trucks gets tested to make sure that it doesn't have free liquid.
Doesn't have one?
Free liquid, so it wouldn't be dripping liquid.
Alright, sounds like a weak spot in the plan to me. Is there a location determined off-site for the higher concentration levels?
The off-site location has not been determined yet. It would be a licensed facility that's able to accept it.
And it's been brought up already about the dewatering process. That seems to be quite a weak link in the plan here. I mean, it's gonna be high concentrations of PCBs if you're taking matter and squeezing water from PCB concentrated matter, and then you have this water that's gonna be highly concentrated PCB water. So that I see as a process, as a problem. I'm glad to have been present for this presentation today. I'm completely opposed to this plan as it stands, and I think we should, I mean, as far as I see, this looks like some kind of plan from the 1950s to dig up dirt and put it in a hole somewhere with a plastic liner.
Thank you.
We're living in a modern world where we should have a better plan.
Remediation.
Thank you.
Chris. Just a quick question on the orange line that you showed coming on Route 102 and down through the center of Lee. That was my understanding, that's all stuff that's going out of the facility. Do you know the number of truck routes that, or excuse me, truck trips rather, that might be predicted for those? You know, how many trucks?
So, I mean, total is 100,000 cubic yards at least. So,
198 working days per year, correct?
that's the estimate of the number of working days. So, I don't have the number.
I got a calculator.
There's criteria to permit. You need more than 100,000 cubic yards, because we have to apply for permit. We apply the criteria today, is the minimum is 100,000 cubic yards.
No, I have some comments, but not questions at the moment. I've been taking notes here. I have a lot of my own personal thoughts that I would be more, that I'm waiting to discuss with you for when we develop our comments to the EPA and GE, including some of the truck routes like don't be down Main Street, that kind of stuff. But this isn't the time for me to bring those kind of things up. I would to log all this in and get it to them later and have an open dialogue with EPA. And by the way, during my walkthrough with the EPA of the site last year, over a year ago, EPA is very receptive to us giving them a list of streets not to go on, so I didn't want anybody to think of that. I brought it up in an earlier meeting, and we were waiting for this to see what the original thought process. This is a beginning draft, so we will be getting back to that also, about places we don't want trucks to go. So I guess I would leave it at that. We had talked about it at an earlier meeting, the Board of Selectmen did, and we will be getting that. But we wanted to see what the first proposal was and the first rough draft, and now we'll be able to comment on that. As far as the red line streets, I did read that the attorney who was involved was the one who brought up this, and that was a separate agreement almost with Pittsfield. as a member of the Rest River before, then Pittsfield sort of just stopped coming, kind of removed themselves. So that's why those red streets were in Pittsfield and why we didn't have any in Lee yet. None of us were involved in this. So we're gonna come back with those kind of ideas. That would be my comment at this moment.
Yeah, I'm wondering about, you said, you'll have another public comment period when the document gets, is that October timeframe you were looking at, after October, or?
The work plan, the transportation plan, in this case, I'll put in a formal document for submittal, is due October, I think it's 31st.
That's what I said, yeah, so October 31st.
Right, the document will come in, it doesn't, first of all, I say that doesn't mean there's no feature between now and
I get that, we're gonna be getting the details.
October 31st, the document comes in, EPA distributes it like we've distributed a lot of our other documents, and we'll open it for public input. They come to EPA and we share it with everyone. And we haven't figured out how long that will be. Typically it's 45 days. We will take that into consideration to our own review and then reply back to GE with further direction.
And I guess is that the point where you'll have more of a comprehensive plan with some details versus this more of a big picture? Because just because I know a lot of them talked about dewatering sites, we'd like those identified, even hydraulic dredging, we'd like to know which side, and a little bit more development.
I'll let Andy speak to what's in the detail, but a couple things are gonna happen concurrent to that or before that. It's called the Reach 5A, the Pittsfield Conceptual Work Plan. So that's a key factor to determine where the excavation is gonna happen in Pittsfield. It won't be the final plans and specs, but it'll show where the excavation is. So that's coming in September. So that's another document. As far as where GE proposes the staging areas, it could go in various documents. I'll leave that up to Andy.
So we've been debating this a little bit. I think at this point, we probably think that conceptual design will at least have preliminary staging areas, like in 5A, that's the section that's being addressed. The hydraulic section is really more what's on in 5C, which is somewhat slight, somewhat. It's the next phase, but we just got the pre-design investigation work plan on approved, so we have to do sampling. So that's gonna be like a year or so down the road, a year and a half. But the things are gonna happen in phases, and so we're obviously focused on 5A and EDF at this point, and then the 5C with pond sections coming up next, and then we'll do 5B, and the work will kind of, there'll be probably 2 sets of work happening concurrently, but we gotta get 5A and other things underway, and then hopefully not too long after that, the downstream one that we
I understand, yeah, so north to south is what we're saying. I think this is the last comment I had, Bob. This being a public meeting and a presentation, as just a matter of public record, I think we should have these maps and presentation. Yeah, this, for, everybody wants to see them, and that way they can, digest it a little bit better.
And, thank you, Sean. Quick question, I know that there's money sitting in escrow for all the towns involved. In terms of the transportation, whether it be, and this might be 2 separate questions, whether it be by truck or train, should there be a catastrophic event? The truck turns over on Route 7, the truck turns over anywhere on these routes, the train derails. Who's responsible for the cleanup? Who pays for it? Are our EMTs, our EMS people going to be subject to that sort of thing? Exposure.
Look at Ohio.
Well, I think it's something, there's some kind of an accident or an event. I mean, obviously, we're only, I want to emphasize the safety aspect. We're only going to hire people that have excellent safety records.
Andy, we can't hear you.
I know, I can only face it.
Can you stand perhaps?
You can speak on that mic.
Yeah, we'll hear you.
What I said was, GE has a very important safety culture, and we're very rigorous about hiring people that have an excellent safety record, both our contractors, subcontractors, et cetera. My point would be, if on this very small chance that something happened, GE and or the contractor would be responsible for addressing whatever the situation is. whether it's even a minuscule, dirt falling off a truck, which I don't think is gonna happen, we load it on a liner, as Mark said, the trucks are lined, we have a cover, but we're gonna have people there to verify and make sure that those things don't happen. If something does happen, it's gonna be our responsibility to correct whatever happens. In terms of like other accidents, I guess you were talking about someone getting hurt, I would assume, EMTs we probably would call. I mean, I had a scenario ever happen, but I assume we would call, but, I don't, dirt, even PCB contaminated soils in a truck versus someone having a real injury, that's like really no comparison. We can maybe work with you and talk about what to do and how to treat people and things like that in advance, but they just worth having some discussion down the road as we get closer to work starting about what makes sense and just to coordinate whether it's with your fire department or where the right people are. But we wouldn't just do it and not educate people and talk about it.
I'm rather than personal injury, I'm talking more about, a truckload of soil spread across Route 7 is responsible.
Yeah, it goes toward transportation. If all this is getting transported into this UDF, let's say, I've been up to the site, you got a lot of soil to move before you start filling. So are you gonna be moving that soil and keeping it on site, or is that additional trucks that will be trucking things off site? Because we haven't talked about getting the UDF ready and all that. There's a mountain there that's gonna have to be moved. So I'm just wondering if that's going to be addressed in any of your plans to EPA, so we could have a chance to digest it and give you some comments. Whatever, yeah, you can talk to them on that. Because we're gonna have to revisit that issue also.
So you're right. We have a conceptual work plan. The technical design has been submitted with another final design due sometime early, probably early 2024. Depends on some other factors. But you're right, under the current conceptual design, there'll be a lot of movement of soil. A lot of it, it's clean, it's a 100% gravel area. Some of it will be used to grade the area, so it's not like they're gonna dig a big hole. It's gonna be moving some of the high areas to the low areas. But at the end, I forget the exact number, there's maybe a couple 100,000 cubic yards of additional soil, just sand and gravel, available post truck at the site. But we don't know what we're gonna do with that yet. One potential option is maybe we'll use it as part of the restoration of some of the areas that have been remediated. Like maybe you could build an access road, So there's ways that maybe we can use that material as part of the project, which would shorten any kind of trucking and also shorten trucking of material back in, which are other way potential. So we need to look at what it is exactly, how much we'll have when it's actually approved. But in terms of a concept at this point, is we'd like to use it as part of the project and not do something else with it. But if we can't use it all, or if it's not suitable, then we have to make other arrangements. So it could probably stay there potentially, but we're all thinking about it.
Okay, so it's not part of the plan at the moment.
Right.
Of any of the truck trips, but we'll be addressing it.
Just one thing I want to add to that, not only what you brought there, these routes were materials being removed from the river and floodplain home.
Yes.
UDF.
Exactly.
Now in Pittsfield here, I'll just use that for starters, a lot of material has to be backfilled into the floodplain and from the river. None of this talks about where the sources are, what roads they're going on. That wasn't part of this discussion.
Right.
It does have to happen, but this was strictly material coming out of the river as going to the UDF or outside. So I don't want to leave the impression that other trucks aren't going to be going somewhere else.
I get it. Well, that's what I wanted to bring it up, now, just to get it on the table and know that we need to think about that, and take it into account when we're talking about transportation and road usage. That's all.
It's 12:29. We said we were gonna have a meeting at 12:30 sharp. I think the most important thing to come out of the meeting is, we have at least a preliminary idea of what GE is suggesting for transportation routes. We're going to make sure that this material is accessible to absolutely everybody. This is just a preliminary conversation. Nothing's written in stone, including the UDF. And so I think we move on from here. I think I would encourage everybody, as soon as we know when this information becomes accessible, where to get it, how to get it, that we should reconvene a meeting with the people of the town of Lee, maybe at the school, talk about this and decide what direction we want to go in. Okay, we're gonna do, actually, we're gonna do a 10-minute break, and we're gonna keep the meeting in order so that the select board can stay here and we can talk about it.
I just want to give the number of trucks per year per day. If I could do that,
Yeah.
someone asked,
No
and the
trucks,
answer
no
was not given. It's approximately 50 trucks per day for those years from, it's not. It's 25 trucks per day per year with 198 working days for 60,000 cubic yards. So almost double that for the 100,000 cubic yards that are down in South County.
Right.
Thank you.
10-minute break. No trucks. no
Treat the river, forget about the truck.
Read it. No trucks. Let them go.
Things that I wanted to ask you to ask about for more clarity is, because I couldn't really tell the roads that clearly. Are they going, how close are they going to schools? And are they going past schools? Can we avoid them going past schools? And ultimately, please correct me if I'm wrong, we've been continually told we will have a lot of authority and decision-making power about what roads are used, but I don't understand the process fully. It sounds to me that EPA ultimately will make the decision on the road and dictate that to us. So where is it, like, how much authority do you feel you have to say, no, you can't go down Main Street, or no, you can't go through this residential area, or no, you can't go past the school? Do you feel as though you really do have that authority to really stop roads that are important to the town, or is this just lip service from EPA and GE?
I don't know that I have a response to that. I don't know that I feel confident that we have complete authority to dictate which roads they choose. They have to come down certain roads. I mean, that's an inevitability if this is gonna happen. But they've communicated this to us that we'll be able to. I'll say this, yeah. My take is that I think we should do everything that we can to not allow them to drive trucks up Willow Hill and around by the campground and through that neighborhood, and especially from the northbound side. I don't see why we can't keep all the trucks coming down Roaring Brook Road there and to the UDF before they get to the campground. That's one thought that I have that I would like to express to them. And then as far as like coming down Main Street, I mean, that's a real no-go for me as well. So like those are the two direct things that I want to push for, but I'm certainly open to push on whichever streets anybody else has an issue with as well.
Yeah, my thoughts originally, before I even saw what they had, was number one, as far as Willow Hill Road goes, no. They have EPA let us know that they have a right-of-way or an agreement, an easement within the old lane construction, like when you first come over the bridge from Lennoxtown and you turn left. You don't have to go up that road and all the way around. You can actually just go into that property and they have an easement to get to the UDF that way. So they wouldn't have to be on any, so I would be pushing to keep them off Willow Road and Woodland Road. Also, no way on our main streets or anything from Willow on Pleasant Street that goes to Pike, Route 102. And it's not because I live on Route 102, I'm just saying this was long before I knew any of this. But to me, my first thought was, well, when they take it out of the Willow Mill Dam, area, that they should be just taking a left, going right up Route 7 and down Walker Street, keep it out of Lee. So that would be my, just second that. So that was one of my thoughts too. Never on Main Street. As far as Columbia, the backup behind Columbia Dam, my thoughts are, without looking at what they had, was they have a lot of property there in the Columbia Mills. They're gonna have to come up with some kind of dewatering situation
It's also
there.
right on the rail.
And it's on the rail, so my thoughts are, okay, get your dewatering set up, put them in a rail. Don't even use the stub, don't even use Columbia Street or Mill Street to get up there. Just send it up by rail. They have a siding up in the gravel area. Take it off and transfer it there. You've already got an easement in there. Keep it all there.
Columbia Mill has the siding.
Yeah, they have a siding, Columbia Mill does, Greylock does, but I don't know across the street over in Greylock. But those are some of my thoughts originally, was just keep it off those streets. And I did know originally when I talked to the EPA that they told me that the rest of the river agreement with Pittsfield was that they were staying off certain residential streets. And that's why I mentioned earlier, I asked, can we say we don't want them on streets? Yeah, make the proposal, we'll send it along, you tell GE they can't do this or that. We'll see what they can do. I mean, those are my initial thoughts when I saw the plan. If everything going on in town is going west or west and south, then there's no reason to use this exit of the turnpike.
Right, they could go west.
I'd say just take it right down Route 7 and 20, through the center of Stockbridge, over Route 102, right across the bridge into New York, and get on the pike. Because you're going west anyway. So those are what I believe this board, and publicly, after we get input from you folks, is what we should be asking them to do.
We all agree with you, Martin. I looked at the map this morning.
Excuse me, Cindy. Cindy Coleman, sure. Yeah, and I'll just say that I concur with what both Sean and Gordon have to say. And some of you know I was loath to even have this conversation today, because I didn't want to be seen as relenting or accepting the fact that there's going to be toxic waste going into the county. But that's a whole separate conversation. But the main thing is we need to maintain a seat at the table. Some of you have said, let's get out of the rest of the river. Well, I don't want to do anything that's going to in any way affect our ability to impact what happens here. So I think, quite frankly, there are people in other towns who think the rest of the river is a waste of time at this point. Okay? I think it's a waste of time, but we're not getting out of it because it's part of the agreement. Okay? But I concur with what Sean and Gordon had to say about the front lots. Let's keep it, if it happens, keep it all out on Route 7, keep it on the turnpike. The town of Lee has suffered enough. All right. Okay. I'm going to look for someone who hasn't spoken yet. Well,
Yeah, please.
just identify yourself, please.
Judy Erkemeyer from Cornwall Bridge, Connecticut. I represent the Housatonic Environmental Action League. We're known as HEAL. We're a tri-state organization. We have people from Lee and other Berkshires on our board, and we have many members from Connecticut, New York, and Massachusetts from the watershed. We've been involved in every lawsuit at this site, at this Superfund mega site, including the current lawsuit before the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and HEAL does not take any donations from corporate polluters. We are a 501c3. So today's discussion, if you notice in the permit, every time they speak about hydraulic dredging, they say at the end, if feasible. There are many hydraulic dredging projects that have not worked, and they have to go and they have to transition over to dredging. So I would encourage you that every time they speak about hydraulic dredging, and every document that they come out with about hydraulic dredging, that you want to see the calculations and the numbers of, the amount of sediment and the number of additional truck trips that it will take if the hydraulic dredging doesn't work. And the dredging, it's just, it's amazing to think of this project going up such a high gradient with hydraulic dredging and what that's going to take, a motor power to get it up there, and how loud that's going to be, and how much fuel it's going to take to power that to get it up there. And you speak about dewatering like it's no big deal. The amount of dewatering that's going to take place at this site is incredibly large, and you need to make them accountable, or attempt to make them accountable, at their dewatering sites to pump and treat. They need to pump that water, and they need to treat it because it's loaded with PCBs. I don't care if it's 50 ppm less, 50 ppm more. It's all bad. It's all bad. So that's one. This document that's coming out of the final design in the fall, and you notice that Dean said, well, we're going to give our usual 45-day period for comments. Well, you're going to get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages in this final document. You need to, ahead of time, ask for an extension for the comment period. We always do, and I'll go for 120 days, and we might get 15 days added to the 45 days. So, pump and treat hydraulic. I was actually shocked to see the additional red line streets. I don't know, Tim, are you in the room?
I'm here.
Did you know about those additional streets?
They're in Pittsfield. They're all in Pittsfield. Pittsfield mayor negotiated us.
I could be wrong, but it might have been, C. Jeffrey Cook.
Yeah.
Was a party to the mediation. And his whole line was to stop anything coming in his neighborhood.
But we knew about those streets. But what he showed today, which maybe you didn't see, is that there are multiple other areas that are now redlined that do not come under C. Jeffrey Cook's party to the proceedings. And so they've taken the mediation, and now they've reopened the mediation.
I think if you go back to the actual permit, you're gonna find that all those streets are listed. They just don't tell you that it's two separate areas. I did notice there were two areas, other than Mr. Cook's. But yeah, I will be more than happy to go back, and will be going back to look at those to see if they were added afterwards. But I believe they were part of they were actually listed. There was a lot of streets listed.
Yes.
A lot of streets listed, so I think that both areas were detailed, and that was the agreement signed by the mayor.
And it wouldn't be a lot to get the median income for those areas and their property values for that areas, just to show the facts and compare it against the Lee area that's being created as a sacrifice zone. And of course, in Connecticut, we don't know how much we have, but it's been estimated that we have between 60 and 80% of what's left of the PCBs in the system in Connecticut behind the big hydro dams. So, it's always good to mention what are you going to do in Connecticut, because they're not going to do anything, but to keep it on the record. And thank you for calling for this meeting. It's a start, and I find Andy Silver from GE a decent guy to work with. The engineers are good to work with. What they have to do is coming from a different place, all of them. And so the more pressure we can put on the engineers, it goes back up top too. So thank you.
I think it's been established that we all agree that this is such a fatally flawed plan right from the get-go. The fact that we're discussing transportation routes and red line neighborhoods, I just find it to be a distraction.
I'm not gonna get to the mic, but I'm a lot of fun. everything, so I should be able to cover the distance. I've mentioned this to you, but I want to put it on record. You gotta keep thinking, GE didn't move their headquarters from Fairfield, Connecticut to Boston for nothing. And if you think we're the only ones that are concerned with this, you're wrong. If you have been watching the newspapers, they have been dumping tons of stuff in Boston Bay, Boston Harbor, and they're gonna have a place to put it. And it's not gonna take a company like theirs much to buy up that sand bin, and we will have one of the biggest dumps in the history of this country, a half mile from our house. And I wanted to bring that up so that we're always keeping our eye on the target. Because they can talk about a lot of things, but that's probably where they're going. Can we go ahead? Thanks, you guys, for your time, all of it.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, just.
What he's talking about.
Yeah, to the mic.
Oh,
This is being taped.
I was feeling comfortable with what?
Well, don't fall asleep, Jim.
So we know about this. Our lawyers in Boston told me one day that that there is a site, and it's down off of New Bedford, and that they took barrels and barrels, and back in the late 70s, EPA allowed them to take barrels and dump them off the shelf. You know, you go out 40 miles where all of a sudden it goes 2 miles deep. And so all these companies were dumping in this ravine. And now they're on the hook of cleaning it up. And GE is one of those companies. And what the Boston lawyer told me is that in the codicil that's being developed, or it might even be out by now, I'm not really sure, but that it says in it that GE will have to take their stuff to land that they already own. And that worries me greatly because, you know, they own the dump. And I've been wondering for a while now why, you know, at one point they told us they have all the land that they need for the dump. And then all of a sudden they buy the old campground. So now they got more acreage, you know. I'm extremely worried, and I know I'm a little far-fetched on this, but I've watched other dumps in the United States start out nice and small in a community, and then all of a sudden they get bigger and bigger and bigger because the EPA and everybody thinks it's better to just keep putting it in the spot where it is, and so that dump goes. Rockwood City in Buffalo is one of the poster boys of that. When you go into Buffalo on the right-hand side, you see a mountain. That's a dump, it's not a mountain, and it's all the PCBs that they put out there. Anyway, so my thought is, what I'm worried about is that those PCBs from the ravine will be coming to our town. And I think we have to watch it very carefully because they do these things at sites all over the place, and it could come and hit us at some point where, you know, all of a sudden, boom, we need some more land to dump on. And, oh yeah, well, GE owns that land over there, it meets the codicils, what we have to do there. And, anyway, I just think that's important to really think about because it's, and Ed is right about that, and it's something of great concern. And I'm worried for the town for this too, because I think it could be bigger. And I worry, you know what I worry about? I worry about the Leahy farm too. You know, because these dumps get so big and big. What happens if they dump on that campground land and they use that up? You know, the next thing they're going to be saying, what's across the street? You know, across the street is, oh, it's a nice big farm. They don't even farm it anymore, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, you know, they make a proposition to turn it into something like that. So anyway.
And the problem also, as you know, is the lack of oversight. It's been suggested, oh, we should have a separate entity to oversee. GE has so far refused to do that. So there's no independent oversight. But aside from the EPA, we know what that's about. I'm going to ask Ann.
First, thank you. Secondly, I just wanted to also apologize for interrupting the meeting at the end. I don't normally do that. Before they left, I wanted that question answered. I don't know who asked it up here about the trucks per day. If it was the 100,000 cubic yards. So to see if they would in any way, shape, or form negate the number. Just something that has happened through all the public meetings that GE and the EPA has held. They avoid questions tremendously. And with Andrew Silver, when I had asked a question about the trucking, he wasted approximately 4 minutes of question time by giving an answer I didn't ask. So it's just a tactic thing. Whether they're professional or not, that's a different issue, but I know that they're very skilled at posting these things and keeping us all okay. During one of the questions, Bob Humans looked at Andrew Silva and requested that they make the information that was on the slides available. And his immediate first response was, we will consider it. So if you guys could just hammer them every other day,
It's not really,
send an email
that was what I was trying
for
to make
requests.
the point of, and it's not really for their consideration, this is a public meeting, those are documents that they presented, they kind of have to provide them to us for the record here, so it's not really up to them, I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's necessary, I'm asking Gordon and Sean to make a formal request?
I would,
Yeah.
why not?
I would-
It wouldn't hurt us, let's just make a formal request, because they presented it at a public meeting.
Right.
It was open to the public, we need those documents for our records.
Right, and if nothing else, you at least should get back on record the answer of, no, I'm sorry, we considered it, and we're not gonna do
Do
that.
you need a motion for that?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Josh?
It's Josh Bloom. It occurred to me that it does seem a little premature that they're talking about trucking routes north of Woods Pond when they have not been, EPA has not, NG have not released where they're going to be doing any remediation work north of Woods Pond. So without knowing where remediation is going to happen and how much in each location, I don't understand how they were presenting all those statistics about what is going to happen in these first probably 10 years of the project when they haven't told us where the remediation is happening. So it isn't just occurred to me now. So if you could go back to them and say, how do we know that this information if we do not know where the remediation in Pittsfield and Lennox is happening?
So one way, Josh, that I looked at it was, you're just showing me the only 3 roads that come out here.
I didn't hear you in the morning.
They're only showing me the only 3 roads that come out of Pittsfield.
Yes.
So, it's like you're telling me these are our options. We already knew those are the options. So it's like, I guess they put some pretty greens and blues, or greens and, yellow, green, and all that stuff. But really, I could have made that map up, a year before I even got on this board and said, these are the possible truck routes. It's like, we know that. So I don't really know, other than this was an initial draft, to start the ball officially rolling maybe. It's for us to be able to say, not on that street, and not on that street.
Okay.
I guess in that way, but really, how obvious can you be? 7 and 20 Walker Street, that's the only way you're gonna get from Stockbridge over there, So it's a great, in my mind, at least it's a start. And now we can comment with public input, we will be giving comment back, and I will certainly be pushing for that.
Sorry. Oh, I'm just gonna mention, when we get this information, I'll put it online with the form submission and set comments.
Sure.
That won't be the only way, but one way.
Hi, 75. I wanted to say that Chris told us that GE and EPA were leaving for a secret meeting in Lennox for 1 o'clock today. So when Lennox sees the proposed routes, 720 Walker Street, if you don't think they're gonna have a hissy fit, and Mirabal is going to allow them to go down newly paved Walker Street, I think we better be prepared for a fight. So that's really important, because they are much mightier than us, they are much richer than us, and they have the power to beat us. And since we're taking the brunt, if the dump comes, we're taking the brunt, I think it's only fair that those should be the route. I also want to know about the contractors. Are any of the contractors going to be trained in removal and testing of this stuff, or they just hire willy-nilly people?
These are the GE it's all, listen, you're preaching to the choir here. They're all GE contractors, they're hired by GE, the oversight is done by GE, aside from, and we've seen it in Pittsfield, been seen it for decades. The suits go up from the EPA, they get out, GE hands them the GE report, they test maybe 1 out of 8 samples, whatever, and they say, oh, looks like it's all on track. But the idea that we need to hire, not that we have the ability to do so, or the funding to do so. I know it's something to do oversight, that won't even be on the table.
Right,
So the plan stinks from
Yeah.
top to bottom. We're trying to make the best of it, as best we can.
And if they do pick any contractors, I feel it's a giant conflict of interest for anybody, any companies that work in Maytag, any contracts. I think that should be off the table, and we should fight for that. And now, since they're gonna take over Holmes Road or all those back ways, there's no more back way to BJ's. Everybody's gonna be going through the main streets, and the traffic's gonna be unbelievable with Tanglewood and everything else. I just wanted to make that statement, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, Gail hasn't spoken yet, and Josh can come up with another.
I just have a request. I have one thing that I didn't understand when they were doing the roads was the orange lines that you said they're going west.
No, orange in the green line means that potentially things that are going to be treated and taken out of town might be on a green-orange line or a definite orange line.
So that's going to go west into north?
Well, eventually that will be the stuff that goes away. That's the highly concentrated is the green with a orange or the solid orange. That's my understanding.
Okay.
I'm not trying to.
But they have different routes.
Out of state.
Quite understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, is it possible for us to get PDFs so we could just like put it on our own computers, or is it gonna be on a PDF on the website?
If we are able to get it on that way, you can download the PDF and print it.
Okay, so that's gonna be on the website.
Hopefully, that's what we're shooting for,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, those are my questions. Thank you.
So, Josh, Bloom, Bob, just clarifying and to correct something you just said. At the last CCC meeting, the EPA was very clear that the town of Lee can hire independent monitors and be on site and can do their own studies and evaluations. So you seem to be saying something quite different from that.
Well, if that was said, was that said at the CCC?
Yes, because I pressed hard on.
Well, that remains, let's say that remains to be seen. Yes, I just think that we're viewed as antagonists.
Well, we have them on record as saying that very clearly.
And again, who knows what that means?
Sure.
Who knows what that means?
Well, I thought your comment was more based on the fact that, where are we gonna get the money to pay for that?
Well, the settlement.
Or can we get, well, let's say, I don't wanna use the settlement for that, I want GE to pay us to do that separately and in addition. And I think that when you read the agreement, I think there's some potential to interpret a certain section that says that.
Would that require?
That they would pay us to independently have a review, not that it would have to come out of our settlement agreement. But I'll go back and reread the section, that's the impression I got when I read the agreement.
Do you think that takes mediation, litigation?
I don't think so, but I think it's a matter of just saying, hey, here's what the agreement says, we want you to, we're gonna pick these people, and GE write the check, and then just see what they say. They may want, disagree with that, but let's see how that goes.
The settlement does have a portion of money.
Yeah. Separate. Yeah,
It's
separate.
like $20,000,
Yeah.
it's not a lot.
Right, well, it's not, but I think we need to tap everything we can.
And I think you're right, but I just, my frustration is that then GE's contractors and gives us access to what they want us to give us access to. That's my fear. The truth of the matter is I really don't trust the agreement at all. Where?
I think the agreement's kind of nebulous on purpose.
Yeah.
obviously.
Clearly, again, I just want to stress getting to Columbia Mill Dam as quickly as possible before they build the dump. We can't wait that long. And I think that may help move dump out of town, just once they have established getting those PCB dredges out of here. But I think you guys have to put the pressure on to get that dam fixed.
Concom in that, involved in that? Conservation Commission, are they involved in that?
No, Conservation Commission is not
Pretty
involved at all, no. And they would, this is really for the safety of the town. That's basically it, it's an environmental thing, but, and HVA should be involved, I guess, because they did a lot of studies on how to convert it from to take away a dam and ensure that it's done ecologically properly. There's a lot of study done. I just don't, I think they're gonna just sweep this under the rug unless we really, it may take some legal action to get them to take care of it. Can we take it to small claims court? Seriously though, this is a real threat.
Understood.
And believe me, we're looking through a lens. I'm looking at it as, look for the worst that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, they're only responsible if there's a catastrophic failure. That's how it reads. There's no pressure on them to do anything. Except at the end of the whole cleanup.
Yeah.
This is just off of what Claire's talking about. I do know that there was a plan to remove the sediment behind the dam. There's already a plan out there. I know this because of the ecological restoration. I forget the exact name right now, but you probably know Sean. Cindy was talking to me about it because I was like, so the mill told me that they were going to be removing the dam, and I asked her, what are they doing with the sediment? What's going on? And she's told me that they were going to take that PCB-laden sediment and bring it off-site. And that has all been set up, and I think that when EPA took over, they just stopped all that, and I don't know if you guys want to look into that a little bit. I could try to call her and see if I could get the documents.
Sure.
But it is out there apparently, and I was told that about 2 or 3 years ago.
Thank you. So we're pretty clear on where we stand. We want to get that printed material as quickly as possible, the maps and the data for everybody to review. And then we will do our very best to keep everybody abreast of any developments that come forward. Again, part of this was, we got to be at the table in order to get the information. We got to see what they initially had in mind. We already know that there are trust issues with this entire agreement, but it's a new day in Lee. I'm going to tell you, probably the knowledge, there's more knowledge in this room right now than there is in the rest of Berkshire County regarding this upland disposal facility, and that's part of the design as well. So maybe, as you say, if they're over at Lennox, talking to those folks over there, good. Maybe Lennox will want to talk to us. Who knows? But we are on our own right now, so I'm very grateful for everybody in this room showing up, for everybody working so hard to ascertain the facts, to sound the alarm. It's an ongoing process, and we're going to keep at it the very, very best we can. So if there are no other comments, anything for that?
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.